South African Local Government Association is calling for the amendment of the Prevention of Illegal Eviction Act. The association says the act has inadvertently created risks and bottlenecks in managing where people should and shouldn't live. I'm joined now by Mluleki, Nkosi, who's the chairperson of Salgas National Working Group on Emergency Services and Disaster Management. Mluleki, thank you for making time for us this afternoon. So there's a delicate balance here that is needed. You need to appreciate how desperate people are for housing, the failure by government to provide affordable housing. But at the same time, it's important to prevent people from unlawfully occupying land and buildings that are unsafe. And perhaps the first thing to look at here is the law. How has the Prevention of Illegal Eviction Act created problems here?
Thank you very much, Clement, for having me, and good afternoon to all your viewers. Firstly, I would like to pass my sincere condolences to the families that are bereaved. At the time that Salga was making a statement, there were about 73 that already passed, but now I understand they are standing at 76. So we want to pass our condolences as Salga. In coming to the question, Clement, the Act on its own, with its desire to create an environment where people are living in peace, and an environment where people are equal to the task to be happy where they live. It has some loopholes where people can occupy the land, where people can occupy buildings, where people can occupy even farms to a certain extent. And if they occupy them, the problem that you would have is that before you evict them, the Act says that you must find space for them where you are going to put them, and you must be able to accommodate them until they find a permanent residence. And we know that the influx of people, particularly in Gauteng, looking for work, it's too much, and even municipalities are the one that carries a burden on what the Act says, and it is very expensive to get accommodation for people that might have occupied a building or a piece of land in a particular area, and municipalities are not geared for that. And in essence, municipalities do not even budget for that eventuality. Hence, as Salga, we are proposing the amendment of the Act so that municipalities can be able to attend to that and can be able to change their bylaws to suit the legal conditions, so that those people that get to occupy land unofficially or ungranted should be able to be evicted on time.
So if this law gets amended, and the President last night seems to be in support of an amendment to such legislation, what provisions do we need the law to have? Because as I said earlier, the balancing act is important here. You don't also want a law that's going to give too much power to whether it's a government entity, and in this context, government, to just evict people. Because again, these things are complex and nuanced. There are people who actually occupy land that is not even suitable for living. There are people who occupy buildings that are unsafe because they don't have much options. They're trying to move closer to employment opportunities. So it's either they occupy and risk their lives and occupy those buildings or that land, or the next option is homelessness. And some of those will be children. And government has a responsibility to its citizens, especially the vulnerable groups. So how do we strike that balance?
Clement, what we need to do, as we have narrated in our statement today, as a collective, all stakeholders, all the three spheres of government, in local, provincial, and national, and as the President has narrated yesterday, including private sector. So some of the buildings that are there, that are illegally occupied, are not only government buildings, are buildings that are owned by private people. So all of us should come together and sit down and be able even to make a public participation, which is the process in amending the Act, to find better solutions, to be able to agree that which law can be able or suitable to assist us to deal with this illegal occupation of land. Because as you say, some of our people occupy land that is inhabitable. And at the end of the day, if the law protects them to sit on that land, when something wrong happens, they tend to go to the municipalities, particularly local government, because we are in a cold phase of service delivery. People go to councillors because they know councillors, and the law protects them to sit in those lands, and municipalities are unable to evict them as they occupy them. And other people who take advantage of the vulnerable put those people in those areas and make them to pay for those areas. And at the end of the day, it becomes the responsibility of government to be able to evict them. So the solution is, as a collective, we must come together to craft the legislation that will suit us when this illegal occupation of land appears.
We are dealing here with a complex issue of rapid urbanization, quite frankly, the need for housing. People want, as I said, housing closer to employment opportunities. At the end of the day, this issue will be resolved if government plans properly and provides affordable housing. Otherwise, desperate people will continue setting up homes anywhere they want.
Yes, indeed, I agree with you, Clement. People can not just sporadically occupy land as and when they wish. But indeed, it is evident that government is doing something to get people to have land. As you would see that there are policies that are promulgated now, the rapid land release for those that can be able to build for themselves. There are people who are given those free houses, termed RDPs. So as and when opportunities arises, people register to get houses. But one must also say that in provinces, especially like Gauteng, and henceforth these things are happening here, there is an influx of people that come every year to Gauteng to get better opportunities. And as they come here, the situation in Gauteng gets saturated such that it is unbearable for municipalities or even provincial government to be able to accommodate them. Hence I say strategically all of us must come together, sit down and address this issue of densification and even the issue of being overpopulated as all provinces in the country.
There's also the issue of criminal syndicates that take advantage of desperate, vulnerable people, making them live in these high-risk buildings or dolomatic land. Surely law enforcement agencies must go after the people who collect rent from these vulnerable groups. Has there been progress there?
Yes, indeed. Those that do illegal practices or illegal things, we need to give them to law enforcement agencies so that as and when these things appear, we are able to deal with them decisively. Because if they are left unattended, this sporadic illegal occupation of land will increase. And as Salga, we also engage in intergovernmental relations with even the police minister to say how better can we be able to guard against those that take advantage of the poor by hijacking buildings and putting people illegally there in buildings that are inhabitable.
But are you getting a sense that law enforcement agencies are making any progress when it comes to also hunting down the people who once these buildings are hijacked, they go with these fraudulent documentation and they get people to believe that they are the owners or part owners of the buildings, and they end up collecting money from these people, even though they know the buildings are unsafe. They are not being serviced. Even inspectors have not been allowed in those buildings, because they must also take responsibility. But that's going to happen if police officers are able to get to them.
Indeed, Clement, I agree with you that the process of arresting these people is very slow, and it involves all clusters. Even the justice cluster needs to be involved in order for those people to be arrested, because sometimes the syndicate gets caught, and when they are arrested, we find that they get out because of lack of proper investigation, and we need to, as clusters, sit together and find ways and means to get these people arrested, including the Zamazamas, as I say.
All right. Mluleki and Nkosi, thank you for making time. He's the chairperson of Salga's National Working Group on Emergency Services and Disaster Management.